What if I told you that the most successful traders in the world are not obsessed with winning, but with losing? They do not chase glory. They do not dream of constant victory. Instead, they rehearse failure. They plan for setbacks, and they welcome loss like an old teacher returning with another lesson. To the outside world, this looks strange, even foolish, but to those who have endured long enough to understand, it is the only path to true control. The real masters don't count their victories. They measure their ability to endure. They know that fear, shame, and discomfort are not enemies to be avoided, but signals to be studied. Each red candle, each painful exit, is not proof of weakness. It is an opportunity to sharpen their inner edge. Losing, for them, is not the end of the game. It is the beginning of mastery. So the paradox stands. The best traders are not those who fight to win at all costs. They are the ones who lose deliberately, courageously, and wisely. They turn every setback into strength. They prove again and again that the best loser really does win. They don't tell you this when you first step into trading. In fact, they sell you the opposite. They promise that if you just study hard enough, follow the right mentors, or discover that perfect system, you'll win. You'll join the chosen few. You'll escape the grind. You'll prove the doubters wrong. And you'll finally taste the freedom that only the markets can give. But that story is a lie. And like all dangerous lies, it's not obvious at first. It hides behind half-truths and seductive promises. Because underneath that glittering story is an unspoken poison. The belief that losing is failure. That every red candle is proof you made a mistake. That every stop out means you weren't good enough. That every loss is a scar on your worth as a trader, and maybe as a person. This lie is deadly because it doesn't just bruise your ego. It hijacks your entire behavior. Tom Hougaard knew this pain better than most. He was brilliant, educated, and committed. He consumed charts, devoured books, and analyzed patterns with the rigor of a scientist. On paper, he should have succeeded. And yet, loss after loss piled up. Not because he didn't understand the market, but because he was still trapped in the lie. For him, losing felt like dying. Every red number on his account whispered, "You're not good enough." And so he fought, harder and harder, until the market gave him its brutal lesson. One day, the lesson came with a number. 127,000 pounds. Gone in a single day. He hadn't been reckless. He hadn't ignored analysis. He had simply been right about the direction and wrong about the timing. The market gapped against him overnight, leaving him no escape, no control, just devastation. For most traders, that would have been the end of the story. Close the account, walk away, and never speak of it again. But Tom didn't quit. He did something more terrifying. He looked inside himself. He discovered that the addiction wasn't money. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't even about proving skill. It was the addiction to winning. The cruel irony was that the more he paid into a test of his identity, and when he inevitably lost, as every trader does, it wasn't just money that vanished. It was dignity. It was self-worth. It was his entire sense of being enough. And that hole could only be filled by the next trade and the next, until the spiral consumed everything. The truth hit him in the most unexpected place, not the market, but at a poker table. He was watching a professional poker player lose hand after hand, cards folding, chips vanishing. And yet the player's face was calm, his demeanor steady, his focus unshaken. Tom couldn't stand it. He leaned over and asked, "How can you sit there, losing, and not even flinch?" The man smiled and answered, "Because I already accepted I'll lose 45% of my hands. My edge isn't in winning more. My edge is in losing better than everyone else at this table." Those words cut deep. They carried the weight of truth that Tom had been running from. Trading isn't about avoiding loss. It's about learning to lose better than everyone else. The lie of winning says, your value comes from your results. The truth of mastery says, your value comes from your process. The lie says, loss is the enemy. The truth says, loss is the teacher. The lie says, win more and you'll be free. The truth says, ready be free. So the next time you feel that whisper, I need, ask yourself, is this the lie talking? Or is this my chance to, because in the end, the best loser really does win. You think you're trading the market. You're not. You're trading your brain. And that brain, for all its brilliance, is old. 200,000 years old, wired for survival in a savage world that barely resembles the one you sit in today. It was built to help you run from predators, to fight rivals, to protect your tribe. It was never designed to calmly watch a candle pull back on a 5-minute chart. Every time you place a trade, you bring this ancient machine with you. You think you're rational, that you're in control. But beneath the surface, the circuits of fear and instinct are firing like it's life or death. That's why the best strategy in the world can crumble in your hands. That your brain is screaming at you, louder than any chart pattern ever could. Consider the amygdala, tiny, almond-shaped, sitting deep in your skull. It is your panic button, your fire alarm, your primal warning system. When it senses uncertainty, it doesn't whisper, it shouts. And when it shouts, it floods your body with chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline. You're at a desk. You're a hunted animal. Tom Hougaard discovered this at rest. His heart ticked along. Manageable case through the jungle. Brain that market, but against biology itself. And most never even realize it. They sit at their desks, blaming their veins. It gets darker. Tom found that traders who grew part of daily life carried even heavy pre-programmed 73% more likely to exit trades early. Think about that. The chart isn't just lines and it's a mirror reflecting back your nervous system. It's your inner child screaming, I can't handle about pips. He was long, heavily leveraged. Money. Mind raced, looping the same thought. From that day forward, he carried what he called the flinch. Every time the market moved too fast, his hand fly. He wouldn't obey. This is what most traders underestimate. Fear doesn't just cloud your mind, it warps reality. It bends what you see. You could stare at the same takes control. You won't see setups anymore. You'll see traps. You'll, you'll see danger where none exists. Tom once described watching a perfect bull flag form. He froze. He didn't enter. The exact same, but fear erased the data, convincing him that this time it was different. That's the cruelty of biology. It doesn't care about your back tests. It doesn't care about your rules. It only cares about survival. And in its primitive logic, survival means avoiding uncertainty at all costs. But in trading, uncertainty is the game. You can't escape it. You can only learn to coexist with it. The first step is awareness. To admit that your biggest opponent isn't the market, it's your own nervous system. To realize that your hands shaking, your heart racing, your tunnel vision, these aren't signs of weakness. They're signs that your body is doing its job, just in the wrong arena. You're not broken. You're misapplied. The second step is exposure. Just like a soldier trains in simulations or a surgeon rehearses failed procedures, you must expose your nervous system to loss until it stops treating it like death. That's why Tom practiced loss therapy. He deliberately lost small accounts week after week until his heart stopped racing at every red number. He desensitized himself to the pain, teaching his body that loss is survivable, that he could breathe through it. And the third step is reframing, to stop seeing fear as an enemy and start seeing it as information. When your heart pounds, it's telling you that uncertainty has triggered an old wound. When your hands shake, it's revealing how much you crave control. These are not flaws. They are clues. And if you study them, you can learn to act even while afraid. In the end, this insight is brutal but liberating. Your brain is wired to lose. Left unchecked, it will panic, flinch, and sabotage you. But once you accept this, once you learn to train your nervous system instead of denying it, you gain the only edge that really matters. Because while strategies come and go, while markets change, the trader who masters his own biology will always have an advantage. Every trader remembers their first big loss, not the little scratches, not the stop-outs that sting, but fade within an hour. I'm talking about the one that burns itself into your nervous system. The kind that doesn't just take money, it takes a piece of who you thought you were. That first trauma is like a scar carved across the mind. It changes the way you see the market forever. For Tom Hougaard, it happened in October 2008, a month etched into financial history. The world was unraveling. Banks were collapsing. Markets were spiraling. Fear hung in the air, like smoke after a fire. Tom had been riding a string of wins. He felt sharp, confident, invincible even. The night before, he scribbled in his journal, "Market feels toppy, might gap down." He saw the storm clouds gathering, but instead of stepping aside, he leaned in. He went long, aggressively, 50 pounds per point on the FTSE. The next morning, the market opened and all hell broke loose. Within minutes, the FTSE dropped 8%. Tom watched in disbelief as his account hemorrhaged. Before he could even react, he was down 23,000 pounds. His screen glowed red. His body trembled. His mind raced. He wasn't just losing money. He was losing control. And the cruelest part? He had predicted the crash in his own notes. The setup was logical, but his ego whispered louder. You can't be wrong. You've been winning. You're untouchable. But trauma doesn't end when the loss stops ticking. It lingers. For the next 2 weeks, Tom checked his account every 5 minutes, like a grieving man pacing by the window, waiting for someone who would never come home. Part of him believed the market would somehow fix itself, that the money would reappear as if the whole crash had been a mistake. It was bargaining, the same stage of grief every human goes through. Only here, the grief was tied to a trading account, and then came the flinch. The nervous system doesn't forget. From that day forward, every time the market moved fast, Tom's body betrayed him. His hands shook on the mouse, not metaphorically, literally. His nerves misfired, his muscles twitched. He couldn't click accurately. He had to start using keyboard shortcuts just to place trades. His body had rewired itself to associate volatility with danger. The flinch became his silent companion. That's the cruelty of first trauma. It embeds itself deep, and your body carries the memory even when your mind insists you're fine. Tom isn't alone. Every trader has their version of October 2008. Maybe yours was blowing up a small account you swore you'd protect. Maybe it was holding a loser so long that the loss became unmanageable, then watching in horror as the price rebounded the second you capitulated. Maybe it was going all in on the sure thing that turned out to be anything but. The details differ, but the impact is the same: the shattering of control. Before the trauma, you believe the market is something you can master. After it, you realize the market is bigger, wilder, and far more ruthless than you imagined. The first trauma exposes the gap between who you think you are and who you really are under pressure. You thought you were disciplined, rational, immune to fear. Then your screen turns red, your pulse doubles, and you discover that the calm, calculated trader you imagined is just a story. The reality is panic, bargaining, denial, rage. The market doesn't just strip away money, it strips away illusion. This is why so many traders quit after their first trauma. It's not just the financial hit, it's the identity crisis. You thought you were smart, strong, prepared. Now you're shaking, second guessing, staring into a mirror asking, who am I really? For some, the pain is too much. They walk away, telling themselves they'll never gamble like that again. But those who stay, those who face the wound instead of running, discover something extraordinary. Trauma can be a teacher. Tom eventually realized that the flinch wasn't his enemy. It was his nervous system trying to protect him. Misguided, yes, but not malicious. Once he named it, studied it, and accepted it, the flinch lost some of its power. He stopped seeing it as a curse and started seeing it as information. His body was telling him, this moment feels dangerous. And instead of fighting that, he learned to breathe through it, to separate perception from reality. That transformation didn't happen overnight. It took time, journaling, and a willingness to look at his pain directly. But once he did, something shifted. Instead of fearing the flinch, he worked around it. Instead of hating the trauma, he mined it for lessons. He discovered that the same pain that almost destroyed him could also become the foundation of resilience. Here's the paradox: your first trauma feels like the end of your trading journey. In reality, it's the beginning. It's the initiation ritual the market demands. It forces you to confront the gap between fantasy and reality, between illusion and truth. And if you accept the lesson, it forges you into something stronger. Think of it like scar tissue. Scar tissue isn't as soft or smooth as untouched skin, but it's tougher, harder to tear, more resilient. The trauma never disappears. You don't forget losing 23,000 pounds in minutes, but you learn to live with it, to carry it, to let it remind you of the cost of arrogance and the value of humility. The real tragedy isn't that traders get traumatized. The real tragedy is that they don't learn from it. They suppress it, deny it, pretend it didn't happen. And then it controls them in the shadows, sabotaging every decision. But if you face it, if you sit with the memory until it stops haunting you, you transform it. It stops being a ghost and becomes a guide. So ask yourself, what was your first market trauma? The one you still remember in your body, not just your mind? Did you run from it? Or did you let it forge you? Because every trader will suffer, but not every trader will grow. And the difference lies in how you treat your scars. Fear doesn't whisper in the markets. It lies. It bends reality until what you see on the screen is no longer the truth, but a distorted projection of your own panic. Most traders think of fear as nerves, jitters, butterflies in the stomach. But in the market, fear is something far more insidious. It hijacks perception itself. Imagine staring at a chart you've studied for months. The setup is clean, obvious, and tested 100 times in your back tests. Yet when your money is on the line, that setup doesn't look the same anymore. The candles feel heavier. The pullback feels deeper. The resistance looks unbreakable. And the voice in your head whispers, "It's a trap. Don't do it. Don't you dare." That voice doesn't come from the chart. It comes from fear bending the lens you see through. Tom Hougaard experienced this in 2011, staring at a perfect bull flag on EUR/USD. It was textbook, sloping flag, clear breakout levels, every rule of his system flashing green. He'd traded this setup 14 times in the past and won 11. But fear whispered differently this time. He hesitated. He second-guessed. He waited for confirmation that never came. And then, in a blink, the pair launched 200 pips without him. He sat frozen, watching the profits that could have been, realizing that fear had stolen them, not the market. This is how fear destroys traders, not by making them reckless, but by convincing them to betray their own data. Fear erases memory. It wipes out statistics. It blinds you to the very evidence you built your edge on. Suddenly, the system you trusted yesterday feels fragile. The edge you tested for years feels unreliable. And the only thing you can trust is the sick feeling in your gut, a compass that points nowhere. Tom, determined to understand, began recording not just his trades, but himself. He set up a camera, not on his charts, but on his own face. What he saw horrified him. In losing trades, his pupils dilated until his eyes looked alien. His breathing went shallow. His jaw clenched. He wasn't just a bit stressed. He was transforming into someone else entirely. The calm strategist was gone, replaced by a desperate, twitching, hunted animal. Fear, he discovered, had a pattern. At first, denial. It'll come back. A few ticks later, anger. The market's wrong. Then bargaining. Just get me back to break even. And finally, panic. A frantic exit at the worst possible price. This cycle repeated so consistently, it was like watching a bad play with the same script over and over again. Fear wasn't random. It was predictable. But knowing the pattern didn't stop it from hurting. Every distorted perception carried a cost. One day, Tom exited a trade early, convinced the market was about to reverse. Instead, it ran perfectly to his original target, doubling what he would have made. The pain wasn't just missing the profit. It was the humiliation of realizing fear had lied to him again, and he had believed it. That's the real cruelty of fear in trading. It's persuasive. It doesn't scream in obvious tones. It whispers just enough to sound rational. This trade doesn't feel right. It's safer to step aside. Maybe the system doesn't apply today. These sound like wisdom. They feel like prudence. But in reality, they're fear bending your vision until you can no longer tell signal from noise. Worse still, fear feeds on memory. The more times you've been burned, the louder its voice becomes. That one trade where the market spiked against you before taking off without you? Fear remembers. It replays that scene every time you see a similar setup, convincing you it will happen again. The scar tissue of past pain overlays the present, blinding you to what's actually there. And yet, Tom discovered something strange. When he reviewed his recorded videos and journals side by side, he realized that his body gave away the truth long before his mind admitted it. Shallow breaths, dilated pupils, a trembling mouse hand. These were signals not of the market, but of fear hijacking his system. If he learned to read these signs, he could catch the distortion before it ruined him. That's when he began building what he called the circuit breaker. Whenever he felt the first signs, shallow breath, tightened jaw, he'd stand up and say out loud, "I am Tom Hougaard, and I'm about to do something stupid." The absurdity of hearing himself say it out loud snapped him back, broke the trance, reminded him that fear was in control, not logic. It was the first step to regaining clarity. But before circuit breakers and coping mechanisms, the truth had to sink in. Fear doesn't just live in your emotions. It rewires reality. It convinces you to see danger where there is none, to abandon systems that work, to sabotage yourself in ways that feel reasonable in the moment. The market will always be uncertain, but when fear distorts reality, uncertainty becomes catastrophe. You see ghosts in the charts. You fight enemies that don't exist. You exit winners too soon and hold losers too long. You are no longer trading data. You are trading shadows. Here's the part most traders don't want to hear. You can't eliminate fear. You can only see through it. The goal isn't to become fearless. It's to recognize fear's lies quickly enough that you don't act on them. To know that when your gut whispers doom, it's often not the market speaking. It's your nervous system reliving old wounds. Fear is not the truth. It's a distortion. And until you accept that, you'll keep mistaking its whispers for wisdom and its lies for logic. The challenge then is simple but not easy. Stop trading the market through fear's lens. Start trading it through data, process, and clarity. Record yourself. Watch your body. Name the pattern. Break the trance. Because in the end, the market doesn't punish you for being afraid. It punishes you for believing the lies fear tells. Every trader has a breaking point. You know the moment. The trade is live. The candles move, and suddenly your breath shortens. Your hands hover over the mouse, uncertain. You whisper to yourself, "Don't mess this up." And in that instant, the entire system you've built, the strategy you've tested, the hours you've spent preparing, all of it vanishes. What's left isn't logic, it's raw emotion. And it's in control now. Tom Hougaard knew this feeling well. He called it the moment of hijack, the moment when discipline and data disappear, and fear, anger, or desperation take the wheel. He had lived through it enough times to know the pattern. His system would set up clean, but as soon as his pulse quickened, the clarity blurred. By the time he clicked, it wasn't his rules acting. It was his impulses. And those impulses had cost him hundreds of thousands. So, Tom did something strange. He built what he called an emotional circuit breaker. Just like the breaker box in your house, it wasn't designed to stop electricity forever. It was designed to trip when the system overheated, to cut the power just long enough to reset. His version was almost laughably simple. Whenever he felt the pressure rise, he stood up from his desk and said out loud, "I am Tom Hougaard, and I'm about to do something stupid." Once, during an Asian session at 3 in the morning, Tom felt the panic rising. He was about to slam into a revenge trade, double size, pure anger. Instead, he stood and shouted his line. So loud, in fact, that his neighbors called the police, worried he was in danger. When the officers arrived, he explained sheepishly, "No, I wasn't planning anything dark. I was just yelling at myself about a Forex trade." One officer shook his head and said, "Maybe try journaling instead." Tom laughed, but deep down he knew. This silly ritual was saving him. But Tom didn't stop there. He engineered his trading platform itself to help. He added a 60-second delay on all his order executions. Every time he hit buy or sell, the platform paused for a full minute before sending the trade. In that minute, Tom had to answer 3 questions. 1. Is this my setup or my emotion? 2. What would I tell a student to do here? 3. Can I afford to be wrong, financially and emotionally? The idea was simple, but profound. Don't trust yourself in the heat of the moment. Trust the version of yourself who planned when calm, not the version hijacked by adrenaline. The circuit breaker was the bridge between those two selves. Think about pilots. They train for emergencies with checklists. They don't trust themselves to remember everything when the engine fails at 30,000 feet. They rely on protocols built in calm moments to save them in chaotic ones. Traders need the same thing. Not a checklist for setups, but a checklist for emotions. Tom's circuit breaker was unique to him, but the principle is universal. Maybe for you, it's standing up and walking away from the desk. Maybe it's writing a sentence in your journal before any trade. I am willing to lose this money. Maybe it's texting a trading buddy your rationale before clicking. The method doesn't matter. What matters is the interruption, the pause that breaks the trance. Tom often compared trading to driving a car. You don't think about pressing the brake when you see a red light. You just do it. The circuit breaker needed to become just as automatic. At the first sign of emotional overheating, shallow breath, clenched jaw, trembling hand, the breaker flipped. Stop. Pause. Reset. Only then act. Over time, Tom noticed something strange. The more often he used his circuit breaker, the less often he needed it. His nervous system began to learn that it wasn't allowed to spiral unchecked. Fear and anger still came, but they didn't escalate as far. The breaker had retrained his mind to expect intervention. That's the deeper lesson. Circuit breakers don't just stop bad trades. They rewire you. They teach your brain that emotions are not commands. They can be observed, interrupted, and replaced with deliberate action. The emotional circuit breaker didn't make Tom a robot. It didn't erase his fear, his anger, his impulses. It simply gave him the gift of a pause, a moment of clarity in the storm. And often, that pause was the difference between ruin and resilience. Ask yourself, what's your circuit breaker? What system do you have in place to stop your worst self from clicking the mouse at your lowest moment? If your answer is willpower, then you don't have one. Because in the storm of the market, willpower is a candle in the wind. You need something sturdier, something automatic, something that flips the switch before you do damage. Because trading isn't about avoiding emotion. It's about building guardrails strong enough to keep you on the road when emotion takes the wheel. And without them, you'll keep driving off cliffs, telling yourself next time you'll be stronger. The truth? You won't. Not unless you build a breaker. It always starts the same way. A good setup, a clear plan, a strategy you've trusted before. You press the button with confidence, but then something unexpected. The market twitches, spikes, and suddenly your stop loss is hit. A loss. Not catastrophic, just painful. But it's bigger than you expected. Or it feels unfair. A mistake. An insult. That's when something inside you snaps. Revenge trading doesn't creep in gently. It bursts through the door like an angry intruder. 1 second, you're calm, following rules. The next, you're consumed by fire. You double the size. You abandon the system. You trade not to win money, but to hurt the market back. As if the market even knows you exist. Tom Hougaard learned this lesson the hard way. In December 2012, he spotted what he believed was the perfect setup, the kind that makes a trader's mouth water. He entered with conviction, only to watch his stop hit by a single pip. One pip. The market teased him, mocked him, and then surged 300 points in his direction without him. The fury was instant. He felt cheated, violated, like the market had done it on purpose. So he did what so many traders do in that moment. He loaded up, tripled his position, and chased every tick as if chasing an enemy across a battlefield. 6 hours later, 62,000 pounds was gone. An entire year's profit vanished. Not because of the strategy, not because of the market, but because of the spiral, the revenge loop that consumes rational traders and spits out gamblers. The aftermath was brutal. Tom tried to hide the loss from his wife. He sat at dinner, grinning too wide, making jokes he didn't feel, hoping his forced cheerfulness would cover the wound. But she saw through it instantly. "You revenge traded again, didn't you?" she said. "Your fake smile only shows up after big losses." Even his face had tells. The shame burned more than the loss. Because deep down, Tom knew it wasn't the market that had beaten him. It was himself. He had become his own executioner. That night, instead of hiding, Tom did something different. He took a screenshot of the trade, the setup, the stop out, the furious re-entries, the catastrophic red numbers, and printed it. Then he taped it to the wall above his monitors. He called it the Wall of Shame. Most traders keep vision boards filled with Lamborghinis, beach houses, and dream vacations. Tom built a vision board of failure. Every revenge trade, every impulsive disaster, every catastrophic night of self-sabotage, captured, printed, displayed. Not as punishment, but as memory. A scar turned into a lesson. At first, the wall mocked him. He hated looking at it, but over time, it became his defense. Each time he felt the heat of revenge rising, he'd glance at the wall. The screenshots whispered louder than his impulses. Remember the cost. Remember the pain. Don't do it again. Revenge trading is seductive because it feels righteous. You tell yourself, "I'll get it back. The market owes me. I was right. It was just bad timing." These are the lies that fuel the spiral. But the market doesn't owe you anything. And timing, as every trader eventually learns, is everything. The truth is, revenge trading isn't about markets at all. It's about ego. It's about identity. It's about proving that you're not wrong, that you can't be beaten. The money lost is almost secondary. What you're really fighting for is self-worth. That's why the spiral is so dangerous. Because when your identity is on the line, no stop loss feels big enough. You'll double down again and again until the account itself is gone. And even then, the rage doesn't end. Most traders won't admit it, but deep down, they're not trading just for money. They're trading for approval. Every green candle is a small hit of validation. Every winning day feels like proof that they're worthy. And every loss, It's not just a dent in the account, it's a confirmation of their darkest fears. Tom Hougaard lived this reality in a way few traders are willing to confess. For him, the market wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was a stage where his worth was measured in likes, comments, and applause. Between 2013 and 2014, Tom entered what he now calls his Facebook phase. Every winning trade wasn't just logged in his journal, it was broadcast online. He would post screenshots with captions like, "Another one in the bag," or "Market gave me a gift today." The likes rolled in, and each one felt better than the profit itself. His self-esteem soared with every notification ping. But here's the cruel irony. The higher he climbed on the ladder of validation, the harder the fall became. Because the market doesn't care about your followers. It doesn't care about your ego. And it always collects its price. The breaking point came after Tom posted his longest winning streak ever, 17 consecutive trades in profit. His Facebook wall lit up with over 200 likes. Friends and strangers alike congratulated him. For a moment, he felt invincible. But the very next morning, the market reminded him of the truth. A single revenge trade wiped out everything, all the profits, all the pride, gone in a flash. He didn't post about that one. The silence was louder than the applause. That's when Tom realized how deep he had sunk. He wasn't trading for money anymore. He was trading for performance, for the approval of an invisible crowd. His decisions weren't guided by his system. They were scheduled around when his posts would get the most attention. He once admitted that he timed trades during the London Open, not because it was his edge, but because that was when most people were awake to see his updates. On another occasion, he held a losing trade longer than his system allowed, just because he had already bragged about it online and couldn't face the humiliation of admitting he was wrong. The market wasn't just his teacher anymore. It had become his stage. And he was the desperate performer. His mentor saw through it before he did. During a conversation, the mentor asked him one question that pierced straight through the illusion. Would you still trade if no one could ever know your results? Tom couldn't answer. The silence said everything. He had turned trading into a performance art, a theater of insecurity. He wasn't playing for profit. He was playing for applause. And this is where many traders still live today. Screenshots on Twitter, bragging in Discord groups, flexing in Telegram chats. Every win is broadcast. Every loss is buried in silence. It's not trading. It's theater. But here's the danger. When you trade for validation, you're no longer in control. The market controls your worth. And since the market is chaos, your worth becomes chaos too. Up when you're green, down when you're red. Your self-esteem tied to a random sequence of candles. That's why the craving for validation is so destructive. It creates distorted incentives. You start taking trades not because they're good, but because they'll look good. You size up not because your edge calls for it, but because the screenshot will look more impressive. You hold losers longer because you've already announced them as winners. The craving for validation turns your trading into a performance, and performance is fragile. One mistake, one loss, one bad day, and the mask cracks. There's a phrase Tom Hougaard repeats like a mantra: the best loser wins. At first, it sounds absurd, even contradictory. How can losing make you a winner? But the deeper you go into trading, the more sense it makes. Most traders fight losses like enemies. They try to avoid them at all costs. They flinch at every red candle, tighten stops out of fear, or refuse to pull the trigger at all. But Tom discovered that mastery isn't about avoiding losses. It's about embracing them, absorbing them, and learning to live with them until they lose their power. He calls it loss therapy, and it's one of the strangest, most radical practices in trading psychology. Every Sunday, Tom would open a fresh account with 500 pounds, and his mission wasn't to grow it. His mission was to lose it, deliberately, methodically. By Friday, the account had to be gone. At first, the exercise was torture. Each loss stung. Watching the balance collapse triggered the same waves of anger, shame, and disbelief he had felt in real trading. He felt the same adrenaline spikes, the same temptation to revenge trade, the same desire to walk away and never look back. But then something strange began to happen. After 6 weeks of deliberate destruction, the sting faded. The losses still registered, but they no longer pierced him. His nervous system stopped treating them like life or death events. The fear softened. The emotions quieted. The storm passed quicker. He compared it to boxing. The first time you're punched, it shocks you, stuns you, makes you flinch. But after hundreds of punches, you stop fearing the impact. You learn to take the hit, protect yourself, and keep moving. Losses, Tom realized, were punches. They didn't have to knock him out. The funny part? His broker noticed the bizarre pattern. Week after week, Tom's 500-pound accounts would vanish, wiped clean in days. Suspicious, they called him to ask if he had been hacked. No one loses this consistently without help, they said. Tom had to explain, I'm failing on purpose. The broker didn't believe him, but Tom wasn't just failing. He was training, rewiring his brain, exposing his nervous system to loss so many times that it stopped being a threat. The results were staggering. Before loss therapy, a bad trade could ruin his mood for 3 days. His emotional pain ranked an 8 out of 10. His chances of revenge trading after a loss were nearly 70%. After 2 months of practice, his recovery time dropped to 30 minutes. His pain level dropped to a 3. His revenge trading fell to 12%. This wasn't just Tom's discovery. He realized that professional athletes and elite performers did the same thing. NBA players practice missing free throws. Surgeons simulate failed operations. Navy SEALs train for mission failure. Why? Because resilience doesn't come from perfection. It comes from rehearsing imperfection until it no longer rattles you. Traders, ironically, are the only professionals who expect to win without rehearsing loss. They crave the high of winning, but never condition themselves for the pain of losing. And so, when loss comes, and it always comes, it shatters them. Tom flipped the equation. He trained for loss until it became his advantage. Think about what this means. If you stop fearing losses, you stop avoiding trades that fit your edge. You stop exiting winners too early out of fear of giving back profits. You stop spiraling into revenge trades because the sting doesn't overwhelm you anymore. Loss stops being your master. It becomes your teacher. But here's the subtle truth. Loss therapy isn't about becoming careless. It's not about saying, losses don't matter. Losses always matter. They cost real money. But the emotions we attach to them, that's what destroys most traders. By desensitizing himself to loss, Tom didn't become reckless. He became calmer, sharper, more focused. He could finally see trades for what they were, probabilities, not judgments on his worth. Imagine this for yourself. Imagine taking a loss and shrugging, not because you don't care, but because you felt it 1,000 times before, and you know it doesn't define you. Imagine watching red numbers appear and simply saying, next. Imagine the power of being immune to the sting that breaks most traders. That's what Tom calls becoming a professional loser. It's not glamorous. It doesn't earn applause. No one posts screenshots of their deliberate failures. But in the long run, it's the hidden skill that separates the survivors from the casualties. The market will always deliver losses. That's guaranteed. The only question is whether those losses break you, or whether you've trained yourself to absorb them and keep moving. And here's the paradox. The traders who master losing are the ones who end up winning, because they don't flinch, they don't panic, they don't spiral. They execute their edge over and over without fear. So maybe the most radical thing you could do as a trader isn't to chase more wins. Maybe it's to practice losing, to rehearse the worst until it no longer scares you, to become, in Tom's words, a professional loser. Because in this game, the best loser really does win. What if the strongest edge in trading wasn't found in live markets at all? What if the real weapon of the world's best traders wasn't money, not even strategy, but simulation? Tom Hougaard discovered this truth after years of being battered by live markets. He realized that the raw pressure of real-time trading was too much for an untrained nervous system. So he built a different battlefield, a controlled arena where he could face every loss, every surge, every panic, without the actual money on the line. He called it his war room. Every morning at 5 a.m., before the London market opened, Tom would sit in that room and replay history. Not in fast forward, not skipping to the highlights, but candle by candle, tick by tick. He would cover most of his screen, leaving only a small window where a single candle appeared at a time. Then he would trade it as if it were real. Position sizing, stops, entries, exits, all executed as though money was at stake. And here's the part that made people think he was insane. He didn't just replay normal days. He replayed the worst days. Tom once simulated the entire 2008 financial crash, day by day, candle by candle, as if it were happening live. It took him 3 months. He would wake up, sit in his war room, feel the pressure of collapsing markets, and react as if his own capital were melting away. His wife thought he had lost his mind. But when the next real crash arrived years later, Tom was the calmest man in the room because he had already lived it. The practice was brutal, but it was transformative. Over 10,000 simulated trades, Tom built a resilience that real money could not provide. His win rate in simulations was 54%. When the same setups appeared live, his win rate was 53%. Almost identical. But here's the critical difference. His emotional stability in live markets was higher. The fake practice had made the real battles easier. But simulation wasn't just about the trades. Tom tracked something most traders ignore: his emotions. During each simulated session, he would type out his feelings in real time. Getting angry at this euro to US dollar pin bar. Want a revenge trade so bad right now? Feel like closing too early. Those notes became a treasure map, a catalog of his triggers. Because when the same emotions appeared in real trading, he recognized them instantly. He could say, "Oh, I felt this before. I know where this leads." And with that awareness, he could stop the spiral before it started. Think about that. Tom built a system not just for trading patterns, but for trading himself. This is where most traders stop. They think simulation is just about practice entries. But Tom saw it differently. Simulation was about stress inoculation, about conditioning his nervous system to handle the weight of the market without breaking. And the results went far beyond trading. Tom noticed his patience improved. His focus sharpened. He became more deliberate in his actions outside the market, too. The same mental muscles that held him steady during simulated chaos made him calmer in daily life. There's a reason why elite performers across fields use the same method. Pilots don't practice mid-air emergencies in real jets. They drill them in simulators. Surgeons don't experiment on living patients. They rehearse on models. Soldiers don't wait for real combat to learn. They build mock war zones and train until instinct takes over. Tom realized traders must do the same, because trading isn't just about charts. It's about how your nervous system handles uncertainty, loss, and stress. And the only way to strengthen it is to expose it to simulated pain. At first, simulation feels pointless. Traders crave the adrenaline of real markets. They dismiss practice as boring, mechanical. But here's the paradox: the boredom is the point. By learning to execute calmly in simulated boredom, you build the same habits you'll need in real chaos. And make no mistake, chaos will come. The flash crashes, the sudden reversals, the overnight gaps. When they hit, unprepared traders panic. But the ones who have rehearsed the storm, they breathe, they act, they survive. Tom calls it stress inoculation. The way vaccines expose your body to a weakened version of a virus so you can resist the real one. Simulation is the psychological vaccine for trading. Each fake loss builds immunity. Each fake panic strengthens your response. until the real thing arrives and you're ready. So the question is, are you willing to simulate your pain, to practice the worst days before they arrive, to inoculate yourself against the chaos that will inevitably come? Because one day, the market will crash again. It will shake the weak out, punish the unprepared, and test every fiber of your discipline. And when that day comes, the trader who has rehearsed will not panic. He will act. He will endure. He will win. Not because he avoided pain, but because he practiced it. Every trader has two identities: the one the world sees and the one they carry in silence. The danger comes when those two blur, when trading results fuse with self-worth, when "I lost" becomes "I am a loser." Tom Hougaard lived that trap. For years, he wasn't just a man who traded, he was a trader. It consumed his sense of self. His car license plate read TRADER1. His Twitter bio bragged, "I eat pips for breakfast." His wardrobe was filled with trading branded shirts. He thought wearing the identity would make it real, permanent, unshakable. But the market has no respect for your image. And when the losses came, as they always do, his identity began to fracture. After a spectacular winning quarter, Tom strutted into the dealership and bought the car. Every look at that plate felt like proof he had arrived. But then came 6 months of drawdowns, one losing streak after another. Soon, every glance at that plate was a knife twist. The car that once screamed success became a mocking echo of failure. The breaking point was almost comic. He attended a trading conference wearing a shirt that read, "I Heart Forex." That same month, he had lost 30,000 pounds. A stranger asked him, "Why do you love something that clearly hates you?" Tom laughed on the outside. Inside, it crushed him. That's when he realized he had confused his results with his identity. He called what followed his identity detox. The first step was stripping away the labels. He threw out the shirts, changed the bio, stopped branding himself with trading slogans. But detox went deeper than clothes and slogans. It was about rewiring the language in his head. He began to speak about trades in the third person. Instead of "I lost," he said, "The system is in drawdown." Instead of "I nailed that trade," he said, "The setup performed as expected." It felt strange, robotic at first, but slowly it created distance. Losses no longer attacked his self-worth. Wins no longer inflated his ego. He even changed his passwords. From "winning 2015" to "process not profit." From "trading king" to "just data 2016." Every login became a mantra. You are not your results. And something profound began to happen. His best trading days weren't the ones where he made the most money. They were the ones where he forgot he was even trading, where he followed his system so cleanly that at the end of the day, he looked at his P and L with surprise. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but always detached. That detachment was freedom. Think about how radical that is. Most traders live on the roller coaster. A green day makes them euphoric. A red day makes them ashamed. Their mood Their confidence, their very self-image swings with every candle. But Tom had found a way off the ride. By detoxing his identity, he stopped giving the market control of his worth. Here's the paradox. Once he stopped chasing identity through trading, his results improved. Without the need to prove himself, he executed with more clarity. Without the fear of humiliation, he could hold trades longer. Without the burden of ego, he could take losses with dignity. But the detox wasn't just about protecting himself from pain. It was about protecting him from glory too. Because glory is just as dangerous as shame. When you start believing your wins mean you're invincible, the market is already preparing your lesson. Tom learned that the true measure of a trader is not how big the wins are, but how invisible the ego is. One journal entry from that period reads, "Today, I forgot I was a trader. I was just a man executing a plan. My P&L surprised me. That is when I know I am free." Freedom came not from conquering the market, but from conquering the need to tie his identity to it. And this is where the lesson reaches you. Ask yourself, who are you when the screen turns off? Are you still whole when the P and L is red? Can you walk away from a losing streak with dignity intact? If not, you're carrying the same poison Tom once carried. The detox is available to you too. It begins with language. Stop saying, "I lost." Say, "The system lost." Stop saying, "I won." Say, "The setup worked." Create distance. Protect yourself. Then, examine the symbols in your life. Are you wearing the identity of a trader like a costume? Are you chasing the image more than the craft? Strip it away. You are not your car plate. You are not your bio. You are not your screenshot folder. You are the process. Nothing more, nothing less. That's the detox. And if you do it, something extraordinary will happen. You'll find that the market loses its power to define you. A loss will sting, but it won't scar. A win will thrill, but it won't blind. You'll trade not to prove who you are, but simply to trade. And in that detachment lies mastery. Because the market can strip away money, pride, and ego, but it cannot strip away a man who no longer ties his identity to its whims. That is the power of an identity detox. The market doesn't just move prices, it moves you. Every flicker of a candle, every surge, every collapse, it's not only data on a chart, it's a mirror, a reflection of what lives inside you, waiting to be revealed. Most traders never realize this. They think they're trading EURR, USD, or gold, or the S&P. But in truth, they're trading their own fear of being wrong. Their craving for validation, their unresolved anger, their unhealed wounds. Tom Hougaard learned this the hard way. After years of pain, he began to notice something uncanny. His trading mistakes weren't random. They followed patterns, patterns that looked eerily similar to the struggles he'd carried since childhood. One journal entry hit him like lightning. Took profits too early on GBP/USD. Same spot as always. Same fear. Dad left when I was 8. Can't handle good things lasting, even in trading. That sentence changed everything, because Tom realized he wasn't just cutting trades short. He was replaying the fear of abandonment, The same wound that made him cling too tightly in relationships made him exit too quickly in markets. His trading wasn't just about money, it was therapy. Every chart was a session, every loss a revelation, every hesitation a wound speaking. He began to map it out. Overtrading, that was his hunger for attention. Holding losers too long, that was his futile attempt to fix the unfixable, the same way he had tried to fix broken relationships. Revenge trading, that was his unprocessed anger at authority figures. Cutting winners short, that was his terror of abandonment. It was all there, written in the charts like a diary he never meant to keep. For years he had thought trading was about setups. Now he saw it was about self. The market had been his therapist all along, patiently exposing his wounds until he paid attention. So Tom went further. He hired a real therapist who specialized in traders. In their first session, she didn't ask about charts. She asked, "Tell me about your relationship with disappointment." Tom laughed, assuming she meant trading, but she meant his father. By session 3, he was crying about trades that reminded him of being helpless as a child. And here's the paradox. The more he healed the old wounds, the better his trading became. Because the market doesn't care about your trauma, but it will trigger it. Every day, every trade, until you see it clearly enough to separate yourself from it. Tom began asking new questions during trades. Am I protecting profits or protecting myself from disappointment? Am I holding this loser because of hope or because I can't stand letting go in life? That awareness changed everything. His average winning trade more than doubled. Not because his system improved, but because he improved. Think about that. The biggest upgrades in trading don't always come from strategy tweaks. They come from healing the trader who uses the strategy. The market is relentless in this role. It doesn't sugarcoat. It doesn't comfort. It doesn't say what you want to hear. It simply reflects. If you're needy, it shows you. If you're arrogant, it punishes you. If you're fearful, it exposes you. If you're patient, it rewards you. That's why Tom began treating trading like therapy sessions. Each trade became a chance to ask, what is this showing me about myself? His journals turned into emotional transcripts. He didn't just record entry and exit points. He wrote about what he felt, what memories it triggered, what impulses took over. Over time, the market's voice grew clearer. It wasn't random noise. It was guidance. Harsh, yes, but honest. And here's the beautiful twist. Once Tom accepted the market as his therapist, losses stopped feeling cruel. They became lessons. Each sting carried wisdom. Each drawdown was a mirror showing him what needed healing. He began to notice patterns beyond trading too. Impatience on the chart mirrored impatience with his children. Needing to prove himself in trades mirrored his need to prove himself in conversations. Fear of missing out on moves mirrored fear of missing out in life. Trading became the most honest feedback loop he had ever known. But this isn't just Tom's story. This is every trader's reality. If you look closely enough, your P&L is a map of your psychology. The chart doesn't lie. It shows you your relationship with risk, with loss, with control, with uncertainty. It shows you who you really are when pressure mounts. The market is not against you. It's not cruel. It's not out to destroy you. It's trying to show you yourself. The question is whether you're willing to see. Because here's the truth. Until you face those wounds, they will keep bleeding into your trades. You can study systems for years, buy courses, follow gurus. But if you haven't faced your fear of abandonment, your craving for validation, your anger at authority, the market will drag it out of you again and again. Tom likes to say, the market doesn't speak in words, it speaks in wounds. And if you listen, really listen, it will give you the most valuable gift you can ever receive: self-awareness. That's the deeper journey of trading. Not just wealth, not just freedom, but transformation. The chance to heal old wounds, to face yourself honestly, to grow in ways you never imagined. So the next time you feel panic rising, or greed taking over, or shame tightening your chest, don't just fight it. Ask, what is this really about? What is this trade trying to show me? Because in that question lies the path to mastery, not just of the market, but of yourself. And maybe that's the secret truth. The market was never just about money. It was always about you. The market leaves clues, not just on the chart, but inside you. Every emotion, every hesitation, every impulse leaves a fingerprint. The problem is, most traders never record them. They treat trading like a mystery, when in truth, it's a crime scene. And the only way to solve it is to perform an autopsy. Tom Hougaard calls it the emotional autopsy journal. It isn't glamorous. It isn't about setups or indicators. It's about dissecting your own behavior with forensic precision. Tom's journaling system was borderline obsessive. He kept 3 notebooks, each with a distinct purpose. The first was a trade log, pure data, entries, exits, position sizes, win-loss. The second was the emotional autopsy, his raw feelings, tracked in real time. The third was letters to his future self, advice from today's pain to tomorrow's trader. The emotional autopsy was where the real magic happened. That's where he wrote things most traders would rather ignore. Lines like, felt invincible after morning win, chest puffed out, typed aggressively. That should have been my warning. Invincibility equals incoming humility. Took next trade with double size. Market spanked me back to reality. Lesson. Confidence is quiet. Ego is loud. Can you imagine the discipline it takes to write that after losing? Most traders just want to shut the screen, escape the shame. Tom forced himself to study it, to cut the wound open and see what was bleeding. But he didn't stop there. Every single day, he reviewed his journal from exactly 1 year earlier. Why? Because he discovered something extraordinary. Just as markets have seasons, emotions have seasons too. In January, his journals almost always showed overtrading, New Year motivation, reckless energy. In August, they showed undertrading, vacation mindset, distracted, sluggish. In December, they showed desperation, revenge trading to save the year. The realization was brutal. His biggest losses weren't caused by the system. They were caused by the calendar. His own moods followed seasonal cycles. And without the journal, he never would have seen it. Here's the most painful discovery of all. Across 2 years of journals, Tom found the same sentence written 47 times. I knew I shouldn't take this trade, but 5 words. But I did it anyway. Those words cost him over 200,000 pounds. Now, whenever he even thinks I shouldn't, he stops. No buts, no exceptions, no trades. The journal even predicted his divorce. For months, his entries said things like, too stressed to focus, trading to escape home drama. At the time, he ignored them. Looking back, the clues were glaring. His trading was reflecting his life. The chaos at home bled into his decisions at the desk. Only when he finally faced the relationship issues did his trading stabilize. That's the deeper truth. The journal doesn't just tell you about trading. It tells you about yourself, your patterns, your blind spots, the cycles you're too close to see in real time. Most traders avoid this because it's uncomfortable. Who wants to admit they doubled size out of ego? Who wants to write down they traded out of loneliness or boredom or anger? But if you don't face it, it owns you. Tom likes to say, the market teaches, but the journal remembers. Think of it like a black box in an airplane crash. Without it, you'll never know what really happened. You'll just repeat the same errors until your account is gone. With it, you gain clarity. You see not just what went wrong, but why. And that why is the key. Because once you know why you act out, you can stop it. You can build circuit breakers. You can prepare for your own weak spots. You can anticipate your own sabotage before it happens. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. Honest enough to write the words you don't want to see. Honest enough to admit that most of your wounds come not from the market, but from within. And here's the gift. When you perform emotional autopsies, the shame shrinks. Losses stop being this mysterious, painful cloud. They become data, patterns, lessons. Each journal page turns pain into information. Over time, Tom noticed something incredible. The more detailed his journals became, the calmer he felt during trades. It was as if his brain said, even if I screw up, I'll capture it. I'll learn from it. Nothing is wasted. That thought alone reduced the pressure. The journal was not just a record. It was a safety net. But you must commit. Half-hearted journaling won't work. You can't just jot down a few numbers and call it done. You have to record the ugly truths. The moments of ego, fear, greed, and shame. Only then will the pattern reveal itself. The emotional autopsy is not for the faint of heart, but it is for the serious. So here's the challenge. If you want to grow as a trader, stop asking, what's the best strategy? And start asking, what would my journal say about me right now? Because the journal never lies. It shows you the trader you really are, not the one you pretend to be. And only when you face that truth will the market begin to reward you. That's the power of the emotional autopsy journal. Every trader dreams of mastery, but mastery doesn't arrive in a single moment of triumph. It unfolds in stages, painful, humbling, transformative. Tom Hougaard calls them the three phases of trader maturity. And if you've been in the markets long enough, you've likely lived at least one of them. Phase 1, the excitement addiction. Tom calls this trading puberty. Everything feels electric. Every candle is a thrill. You check charts the way a teenager checks texts from a crush. Every 5 minutes, desperate for another hit of dopamine. In this phase, you live and breathe markets. You watch YouTube tutorials at 3 a.m. You buy courses you'll never finish. You join Discord groups filled with the same manic energy. You take screenshots of perfect setups and promise yourself that next time you'll nail it. Tom remembers this phase vividly. His hard drive contained thousands of chart screenshots. He bought 23 courses, finished maybe 2. His browser had 47 tabs open, each one a potential secret to riches. And his P and L, bleeding slowly. Death by 1,000 impulsive cuts. This phase is intoxicating because it feels like growth. You're learning, you're active, you're in motion. But the truth? You're not trading the market. You're trading your excitement. You're addicted to the rush of possibility, not the discipline of execution. Phase 1 costs money. For Tom, it was £73,000. Tuition paid to the market. For you, it may be less or more, but everyone pays. Because the only way out of Phase 1 is through it. Phase 2, the dark night of the trading soul. Eventually, the excitement burns out. Reality sets in. Losses pile up. Hope begins to die. This is where many traders quit. For Tom, Phase 2 arrived after a brutal week where he lost £40,000 trying to make it all back. He describes sitting in his car outside his house for hours, too ashamed to face his family. It wasn't the money, it was the mirror. The realization that he wasn't a disciplined professional. He was an emotional gambler with good chart knowledge. This phase is marked by collapse. You delete trading apps. You tell your spouse you're done, though they've heard it before. You search, "Is trading addiction real?" at 3 a.m. You apply for jobs you don't want because anything feels safer than facing the market again. Phase 2 is agony because it strips you bare. It forces you to see who you really are beneath the excitement. No more dopamine, just silence, just shame. But if you endure the darkness, something extraordinary happens. You stop trying to win and start trying to understand. You begin to ask, why am I sabotaging myself? Why do I need to be right so badly? Why do I keep repeating the same mistakes? This is the breaking open. The moment where trading shifts from a shallow chase for money to a deeper journey of self-awareness. Phase 3, the boring beautiful. Tom's breakthrough into Phase 3 came not with a jackpot trade, but with the most underwhelming win of his career. A small euro to US dollar trade, tiny size. It hit the target. He closed it, and he felt nothing. No excitement, no relief. Just calm. Just data. His wife asked how his day was. He said, fine. And he meant it. Phase 3 is boring to outsiders. You're not chasing thrills. You're not bragging online. You're executing the same setups you've run for years without boredom. You forget to check your P&L some days because you're so immersed in the process. Losses don't trigger shame. Wins don't inflate ego. They're just part of the rhythm. But to those who have lived through phases 1 and 2, phase 3 is the most beautiful state imaginable. It's freedom, not freedom from loss, but freedom from suffering. Tom calls this phase the boring beautiful, because true mastery isn't glamorous. It's quiet. It's consistent. It's the steady heartbeat of process over performance. If you're listening to this, ask yourself, which phase are you in? Are you still intoxicated by excitement, screenshotting every setup, buying every course? Are you in the darkness, sick of losses, wondering if you should quit? Or are you on the other side, where trading has become calm, methodical, boring, and deeply fulfilling? The truth is, you can't skip phases. You can't leapfrog from excitement to mastery. You must burn through phase 1. You must endure the dark night. And only then can you emerge into the boring beautiful. Each phase has its gift. Phase 1 gives you exposure. Phase 2 gives you humility. Phase 3 gives you peace. Together, they shape the trader you're meant to become. And here's the paradox. Mastery isn't about conquering the market. It's about conquering yourself. The market simply provides the arena. So if you're still in the early phases, don't despair. Don't rush. Let the process unfold. Every mistake, every loss, every breakdown is carving you into something stronger. One day, you'll wake up, place a trade, follow your rules, close it, and feel nothing. No high, no low. Just presence, just process, and you'll smile. Because you'll know you finally arrived at the boring beautiful. That's the journey. That's the path. The 3 phases of trader maturity. For most people, trading is a means to an end. Freedom, wealth, recognition, the dream of walking away from a job, traveling the world, living on their own terms. But for a rare few, trading becomes something else entirely. It becomes a practice, a path, a spiritual mirror that strips away illusions and reveals who you really are. Tom Hougaard is one of those rare traders. After years of losses, trauma, and breakthroughs, he began to see trading not as a battle against the market, but as a discipline, a daily ritual. Like meditation, like martial arts, like prayer. His mornings looked less like a Wall Street office and more like a monastery. At 4:45 a.m., his body woke without an alarm. At 5 a.m., he sat in silence before his trading screens. Monitors dark, like altars waiting to be lit. He meditated, not to escape, but to arrive. At 5:20, he wrote down 3 things he was grateful for. At 5:30, he reviewed yesterday's trades without judgment. No shame, no pride, just observation. At 5:45, he set an intention for the day. I trade to stay awake, not to take. Before sitting down, he bowed to his trading station, the way a martial artist bows to the dojo. It wasn't superstition. It was respect. Respect for the market as a teacher, not an enemy. These rituals transformed his relationship with trading. Suddenly, it wasn't about chasing wins or avoiding losses. It was about presence, about awareness, about staying conscious in the face of fear and greed. Tom recalls a day when he made 50,000 pounds. The old him would have been euphoric. He would have bragged, posted, maybe even doubled risk the next day. But this time, he felt empty, hollow. Then came another day when he lost 5,000 pounds, and yet he felt peaceful, content, because his measure of success had shifted. It wasn't about the P and L anymore. It was about the state of his mind. That's when he realized he wasn't trading for money anymore. He was trading for presence. He even began tracking meditation minutes alongside his trades. The correlation was undeniable. On days with 0 to 10 minutes of meditation, his win rate hovered around 43%. With 10 to 20 minutes, it climbed to 52%. With 20 minutes or more, it reached 58%. But the win rate wasn't the point. The point was quality of presence. On high meditation days, losses didn't sting. Wins didn't intoxicate. He was simply there, watching, acting, letting go. This was the paradox he had been searching for. The less he cared about money, the more skillful he became. The more he detached from winning, the better he executed. Most traders come to the market to escape life. Tom came to the market to embrace it, to see his own mind, unfiltered. The fear, the greed, the shame, the pride, it all rose to the surface in real time. And instead of running, he stayed. He breathed. He bowed. Trading became his meditation cushion, his dojo, his prayer mat. Of course, outsiders didn't understand. When friends asked about his rituals, they laughed. You bow to your computer? They teased. Tom just smiled. He knew they hadn't seen what he had seen. They hadn't faced the raw mirror of the market. Because here's the truth. When you strip trading down, it's not about money. It's about awareness. It's about whether you can stay awake in the middle of chaos, whether you can remain still when your body screams to act, whether you can let go when every cell clings to certainty. This is why trading, at its highest level, becomes a spiritual practice. Not because it's mystical, but because it requires the exact same qualities as meditation, martial arts, or prayer: discipline, humility, presence, surrender. Tom likes to say, the market is my monastery. The charts are my scriptures. Every trade is a lesson. And it's true. On days he meditates deeply, his trading feels effortless. On days he skips, he feels scattered. The market reflects it back immediately, without mercy. But the beauty is this: the market doesn't punish to be cruel. It teaches to awaken. Every loss is a bell ringing. Wake up. You weren't present. Every win is a reminder. Stay humble. This too will pass. That's the secret of spiritual trading. Money comes and goes. Accounts rise and fall. But the real wealth is in the presence you cultivate, the patience you develop, the humility you learn. When you start to see trading this way, everything shifts. Screens stop being battlegrounds. They become teachers. Losses stop being humiliations. They become mirrors. Wins stop being validations. They become tests. Trading becomes not just a profession, but a path of awakening. So the next time you sit down at your desk, ask yourself, are you here to chase money? Or are you here to practice presence? Because the market doesn't care about your reasons, but it will reveal them instantly, mercilessly, honestly. For Tom, trading is no longer about Ferraris or freedom. It's about bowing to the screen, breathing through the chaos, and finding peace in the storm. And maybe that's the highest form of mastery, not the one that shows up in your bank account, but the one that shows up in your mind, in your heart, in the way you live your life. That's trading as spiritual practice. Every trader loses. That's not a flaw. It's not a glitch in the system. It is the system. Loss is as natural to trading as gravity is to walking. But the difference between amateurs and masters is simple. The amateur suffers every time. The master doesn't. Tom Hougaard learned this the hard way. His record losing streak came in February 2017. 23 trades in a row, all losers. Most traders would have quit by number 10. By number 15, Tom was questioning everything. By number 20, he was numb. But then something extraordinary happened. By trade 23, he surrendered, not in despair, but in peace. He describes it like this: I took trade 24 with the same care as trade 1. Not because I believed it would win. I had given up on winning. I took it because that's what I do. I follow my system. Win or lose, I show up. And trade 24 won. So did 25 and 26. The streak broke, but the lesson remained. His job was never to win. His job was to execute. That realization freed him. He wrote a note and taped it to his monitor. I am paid to place orders, not to be right. That sentence changed everything. Suddenly, losses stopped feeling like failures. They became transactions, business expenses, the price of clarity. Here's the paradox. The less he cared about winning, the more he won. The less he suffered over losing, the smaller the losses became. Not because the market changed, but because his relationship to it transformed. That's the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Think about it. Every loss carries pain. The red number in your account, the sting of being wrong, the frustration of watching the chart move without you. That's unavoidable. But the suffering, that spiral of self-blame, anger, revenge trading, that's a choice. It's the story you tell yourself about the pain. Most traders compound their pain into suffering. A stop out becomes, I'm an idiot. A red day becomes, I'll never make it. A streak becomes, the market hates me. That story hijacks discipline. It fuels revenge trades. It turns one cut into a hemorrhage. Tom flipped the script. He stopped seeing losses as insults and started seeing them as tuition. He realized the market wasn't against him. It was training him. Every loss was feedback. Every red day was practice. He even found humor in it. After a brutal losing day, his favorite journal entry simply read, lost money, kept dignity. That's a win. Imagine the freedom in that. To walk away from a red day with your peace intact. To laugh at yourself instead of punish yourself. To accept pain without creating suffering. That is the heart of trading mastery. Tom compares it to athletics. Every boxer takes punches. Every runner feels fatigue. Every chess player sacrifices pieces. Loss is part of the game. But only in trading do people think they should win without loss. profit without pain. It's delusion. And it's why most never make it. The masters, they embrace the punches. They build muscle where others feel fear. They stop fighting the inevitability of pain and start training their response to it. Tom once said, "The best loser wins." It sounds like a contradiction, but it's the deepest truth in markets. Because when you lose well, calmly, cleanly, with dignity, you free yourself. You protect capital. You protect discipline. You protect the part of yourself that must show up tomorrow. Losing well is the real edge. Here's how Tom framed it. A bad loser asks, "Why me?" A professional loser asks, "What did this teach me?" A bad loser chases the next trade out of anger. A professional loser resets, breathes, journals. A bad loser hides from the pain. A professional loser feels it fully, but doesn't drown in it. And over time, this practice compounds. Because if you suffer less, you trade longer. If you trade longer, you learn more. If you learn more, you grow stronger. And eventually, you arrive at a paradoxical freedom. You stop needing to win, and therefore, you win. This shift showed up everywhere in Tom's life. He stopped obsessing over streaks. He stopped measuring days in green or red. He measured them in dignity, consistency, peace. Some days the market paid him. Some days it didn't. But every day, he paid himself. With self-respect. That's the paradox most traders never grasp. The amateurs think trading is about being right. The professionals know it's about showing up. The amateurs suffer when they lose. The professionals learn. When you internalize this, everything changes. Losses shrink in power. Red days become tolerable. Drawdowns stop feeling like death sentences. You stop fearing the market and start respecting it. Tom's monitor still carries that post-it note. I am paid to place orders, not to be right. He calls it his mantra of freedom. Because at the end of the day, money comes and goes. But dignity, peace, presence, that's wealth you keep, no matter what the chart does. So the next time you hit a losing streak, remember this. Pain is the price of clarity. Loss is the cost of wisdom. Suffering, that's optional. And if you can master the art of losing well, you might just find what Tom discovered after 23 straight losses. Freedom. Not freedom from pain, but freedom from suffering. And in that freedom lies the only true victory that matters. You've made it all the way here. And that says something about you. Most people click away when trading gets uncomfortable, when the story shifts from profits and setups to pain, loss, and self-reflection. But you stayed. You leaned in. That makes you different. Now the question is, what will you do with it? At 9:30 tomorrow morning, when the bell rings, you'll face the same pressure as always, the same temptations, the same fears. But this time, you have a choice. You can keep chasing wins, clinging to outcomes, suffering with every loss. Or you can do something radical. You can trade like the best do. You can make peace with losing. Here's your mission. Write this on a post-it note and stick it to your monitor. I am not my P and L. I am my process. And for the next week, judge yourself only on this. Did I follow my rules? Green day. Ask, did I follow rules? Red day. Ask, did I follow rules? Make that your only metric. Strip away the noise, the ego, the obsession with results. Trade with dignity, trade with presence. And when you've done it, come back here and comment just one word: loser. Not because you are one, but because you're brave enough to learn like one. Because you understand that in this game, the best loser really does win. So go ahead, grab that pen, write the words, stick the note, and tomorrow, when the market tests you, as it always does, you'll be ready, not to prove yourself, not to be right, but to walk the only path that matters, the path of process, the path of presence, the path of the best loser.